Hello again everyone and welcome to another video. So the title of this video is JW Disfellowshipping, Totally Unscriptural, Pharisaical, Cruel. So what is Jehovah's Witness disfellowshipping? Well, what that is that if someone has committed a serious sin and is unrepentant, and they are expelled from the congregation and they are shunned by family and friends. Now, that isn't always the case where someone is repentant and is still disfellowshipped, but I will show you how the whole practice is totally unscriptural. So let's turn together to Jesus's words, which blows disfellowshipping completely out of the water. And that is, if we turn to Luke 15, and we'll look at verses 11 to 32. So that's Luke 15, 11 to 32. Now, what that passage of scripture is, very well known. It's the Prodigal Son. So let's read it in its entirety and then we'll analyze it. So Luke 15, reading from verse 11. Okay, so it reads there, it says, "Then he said," that's Jesus, "a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the part of the property that falls to my share.' Then he divided his means of living to them. Later, after not so many days, the younger son gathered all things together and travelled abroad into a distant country, and there squandered his property by living a debauched life. When he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred throughout that country, and he started to be in need. He even went and attached himself to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into his fields to herd swine. And he used to desire to be filled with the carob pods which the swine were eating, and no one would give him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many hired men of my father are abounding with bread, while I am perishing here from famine? I will rise and journey to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men.' So he rose and went to his father. While he was yet a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was moved with pity, and he ran and fell upon his neck and tenderly kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Make me as one of your hired men.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quick, bring out a robe, the best one, and clothe him with it, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened young bull, slaughter it, and let us eat and enjoy ourselves. Because this my son was dead and came to life again. He was lost and was found.' And they started to enjoy themselves. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and got near the house, he heard a music concert and dancing. So he called one of the servants to him and inquired what these things meant. He said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father slaughtered the fattened young bull, because he got him back in good health.' But he became wrathful and was unwilling to go in. Then his father came out and began to entreat him. In reply, he said to his father, 'Here it is, so many years I have slaved for you, and never once did I transgress your commandment, and yet to me you never once gave a kid for me to enjoy myself with my friends. But as soon as this son, who ate up your means of living with harlots, arrived, you slaughtered the fattened young bull for him.' Then he said to him, Child, you have always been with me, and all the things that are mine are yours. But we just had to enjoy ourselves and rejoice, because this your brother was dead and came to life, and he was lost and was found. So let's break this down. So we see here the son sets off for a distant land and squanders his inheritance on prostitutes. So in verse 17, it's a very pertinent point. It says, when he came to his senses. So he came to the realization that he was going down the wrong path, and it was just a road to disaster. And he reasoned to himself, my father's hired men are eating well, and here I am perishing from famine. So he humbled himself and said that I will go back to father and say, forgive me. I have sinned against heaven, against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men. So he set off to see his father. Now in verse 20, it says, while he was yet a long way off. Now, we've all got a walk which is unique to us. It's like a fingerprint. So he undoubtedly recognized his walk. And when he caught sight of him, what does it say? He was moved with pity, and he ran and fell upon his neck and tenderly kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Make me as one of your hired men. But then, as the account goes on, he said, quick, kill the fattened calf, clothe him, the best clothes, put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And the reason? Because this my son was dead and came to life again. He was lost and was found. And they started to enjoy themselves. So that account blows disfellowshipping out of the water. It's not a case of he went back to his father and his father said, okay, it's good that you're back and you've come to your senses, but you're going to have to, pay the price for it, I'm afraid. You're going to have to sleep in the barn for 18 months with the cows and no one's going to talk to you. That is totally unloving, Pharisaical, as I will show in a moment. But that account alone blows disfellowshipping out of the water. So, what basis do the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses give to justify disfellowshipping? Well, let's turn together to 1 Corinthians 5, 9 to 13. So that's 1 Corinthians 5. So this is their justification for disfellowshipping. 1 Corinthians 5, 9 to 13. So it says, in my letter I wrote you to quit mixing in company with fornicators, not meaning entirely with the fornicators of this world, or the greedy persons and extortioners or idolaters. Otherwise you would actually have to get out of the world. But now I am writing you to quit mixing in company with anyone called a brother that is a fornicator or a greedy person or an idolater or a reviler or a drunkard or an extortioner, not even eating with such a man. For what do I have to do with judging those outside? Do you not judge those inside? While God judges those outside, remove the wicked man from among yourselves. So let's play this out. Perhaps I could use an illustration. My best mate is called Mark. Now, if he turned round to me one day and said, oh, Jonathan, I've got a little sideline I'm doing. as a job, earn extra money. I said, oh, what's that? He said, I'm dealing Class A drugs, heroin, cocaine. I said, and I would say, sorry, mate, I can't associate with you anymore, because you're bad association and you're going to rope me in. You're bound to get raided by the police and I'm going to get raided too. But I can no longer associate with you, but I'll keep the lines of communication open. If you come to your senses and realize that what you're doing is going down the wrong path and stop, then our friendship can be restored and normal service can be resumed immediately. Simple. It's not a case of, if he come to his senses, I'll say, well, Mark, I'm going to have to, stop mixing with you for about 18 months, Totally unscriptural. And it's like the Pharisees. Now, we'll look now how the governing body imitate the Pharisees of old in Jesus' day. They're exactly like them. They've modeled themselves on them. And the account that we'll look at is John 9, verses 1 to 34. Now, this is the account where Jesus healed the blind man. And there's a very pertinent point near the end of the scriptures, but we'll read all of it in its entirety because it's good to do so to build our faith. So John 9, and we'll read verses 1 to 34. Now it reads there, it says, now as he was passing along, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, so that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man sinned nor his parents, but it was in order that the works of God might be made manifest in his case. We must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the world's light. After he said these things, he spit on the ground and made a clay with the saliva and put his clay upon the man's eyes and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent forth. And so he went off and washed and came back seeing. Incidentally, there's an excellent reenactment of this account in the dramatization Jesus of Nazareth with Robert Powell. This is a beautiful reenactment of this scene. So it reads on, it says, therefore the neighbours and those who formerly used to see he was a beggar began to say, this is the man that used to sit and beg, is it not? Some would say, this is he. Others would say, not at all, but he is like him. The man would say, I am he. Consequently, they began to say to him, how then were your eyes opened? He answered, the man called Jesus made a clay and smeared it on my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. I therefore went and washed and gained sight. At this they said to him, where is that man? He said, I do not know. They led the once blind man himself to the Pharisees. Incidentally, it was Sabbath on the day that Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. This time, therefore, the Pharisees also took up asking him how he gained sight. He said to them, he put a clay upon my eyes, and I washed and have sight. Therefore, some of the Pharisees began to say, this is not a man from God, because he does not observe the Sabbath. Others began to say, how can a man that is a sinner perform signs of that sort? So there was a division among them. Hence they said to the blind man again, what do you say about him, seeing that he opened your eyes? The man said, he is a prophet. However, the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and had gained sight, until they called the parents of the man that gained sight. And they asked them, is this your son who you say was born blind? How then is it he sees at present? Then in answer his parents said, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but how it is he now sees we do not know. or who opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him. He is of age. He must speak for himself. And this is the point. It says, his parents said these things because they are in fear of the Jews, for the Jews had already come to an agreement that if anyone confessed him as Christ, he should get expelled from the synagogue. Now, if you were expelled from the synagogue, you were rendered practically destitute. And that is the sword of Damocles that the Pharisees held over the people back then. This is why his parents said, he is of age, question him. Therefore, a second time they called the man that had been blind and said to him, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. In turn, he answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that, whereas I was blind, I see at present. Therefore they said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, and yet you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You do not want to become his disciples also, do you? At this they reviled him and said, you are a disciple of that man, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he is from. In answer, the man said to them, this certainly is a marvel, that you do not know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he listens to this one. From of old it has never been heard that anyone opened the eyes of one born blind. If this man were not from God, he could not do nothing at all. In answer they said to him, you were altogether born in sins, and yet are you teaching us? And they threw him out. So how this has the parallel, how the Pharisees, the governing body, have the parallel between themselves and the governing body, is the fact that the governing body, similarly, by this disfellowshipping arrangement, hold the sword of Damocles over the people in the congregation. Because if one steps out of line, they hold the sword of Damocles saying, well, you will be disfellowshipped and you will lose contact with all your family members. And they are just like the Pharisees. Just like them. Because as we've seen, disfellowshipping is totally unscriptural. The prodigal son blows that completely out of the water. The reason why the governing body do this disfellowship in practice is all about control, because they have rendered the Jehovah's Witness religion a cult, and they are cult leaders, and they have that stranglehold over its members, that if you step out of line, if you don't do as you're told, if you don't do as we say, you'll be disfellowshipped and you'll lose all your contact with your friends. And that's why disfellowshipping is totally unscriptural, Pharisaical, and cruel. Thank you very much. All the very best. Bye.